Turned so cold, I didn't have a chance.
I call this meeting of Township High School District 211 Board of Education to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Cavill?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Here.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mr. Lefevre?
Here. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a suggested motion that the board will enter closed session to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, matter pertaining to an individual student, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, and probable or imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the public body. Can someone please move that?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye. Return to order.
Our meeting right now, please.
We have a suggested motion that the board return to open session. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre?
Aye. Thank you for joining us this evening. The board has already heard from a large number of individuals, and we value your input. Over the past 4 years and throughout the last 2 months, we have heard from hundreds of people through email, through hours of public comments, and in many personal conversations. We are mindful of the many voices we hear, and on behalf of the board, we thank each of you for taking the time to convey your thoughts. Many of the messages received by the board have been similar, either opposing or supporting the proposed policy. Again, this evening, we will consider people's input. As board president and pursuant to board policy BDDH, I directed the superintendent to prepare the agenda in such a way to limit the number of individuals who will be recognized to speak. I directed him to publish information so that all citizens interested in appearing before the board would be aware of the procedures surrounding citizen appearances this evening. The parameters for the citizens' appearances this evening were published on the website more than 48 hours prior to the meeting, were set forth in the agenda for this evening's meeting, and have been provided to each individual in attendance this evening. Once the citizens' appearances portion of the meeting begins, we will listen to general comments from 25 individuals. Each person entering the meeting this evening who was interested in addressing the board drew a number. This number established the order of people who will address the board. Each speaker to address the board will have 3 minutes to express their views. A timer is viewable in front of Mr. Kovac, and he will issue the speaker a notification when 1 minute remains. This is an open public meeting, and appearances before the board are open to anyone of the public. As adopted by the board at our last meeting, anyone making a statement this evening may state whether you are a resident of the district, though you are not required to do so. Please understand that the public participation portion of our meeting is not a dialogue with citizens, and board members will not answer questions or respond to speakers' comments. After the citizens' appearances, later in this meeting, the board will consider this policy, including a potential vote. Before we begin with citizens' appearances, Dr. Cates, would you like to make any opening remarks?
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Since early September, we have communicated with our community about our proposed equal educational opportunities policy. We presented the policy to the District 211 community and to the board for its first consideration on September 19. In response to comments and questions from our community following the first review, the board asked that we provide greater detail and understanding for all about the process by which we respond to a family's request for support of transgender students. To inform people of our practices, we held a special board meeting on October 10, dedicated solely to the purpose of discussing the proposed policy. We detailed the procedures we follow to ensure meaningful support to gender nonconforming students, our protection for the rights of all students, and we provided written responses to many frequently asked questions. On October 17, the board again heard a variety of viewpoints in our community and discussed the policy. We believe it is time now to move forward with this policy, though we would not plan to implement it until the start of the second semester in January, so that we can communicate with students, parents, and staff. The proposed policy is based on a model policy prepared and distributed by the Illinois Association of School Boards. Many other districts in our area and many throughout the state have adopted a similar policy without disruption, incident, or controversy. Publicly and transparently, our detailed procedures articulate the careful and caring steps we take in our schools. We know that people's concerns and perceptions are heartfelt. Regardless of whether you support or oppose the adoption of this policy, we all share the same mission and purpose of supporting the young people in our schools to have the best possible learning environment and navigate the challenges and opportunities of young adulthood in healthy ways. One of the biggest concerns we continue to hear is the idea that anyone can go in any locker room whenever they feel like it, as if a different gender can be declared at will. That's not the way it works. Upon a request from the student's parent or guardian, a student's stated gender in the official school record establishes the student's gender for access to gender-specific facilities. Our procedures require the involvement of parents or guardians with the knowledge and support of our trained staff members. Once a family requests a change in a student's stated gender, the student, their parent, and the school will work collaboratively to develop a gender support plan. Access to gender-specific facilities by transgender or gender nonconforming students may take place only as articulated in a gender support plan developed in partnership between the family and school personnel. For years, transgender and gender nonconforming students have used our restrooms without notice or disruption. For 4 years, transgender and gender nonconforming students have had access to our locker rooms, again, without any disruption among students. 4 years after implementing our practices to support locker room access, we know the following. Our own direct experience shows us that providing locker room access based on gender identity has resulted in no disruption in our locker rooms. Other school districts that allow locker room access without any limitation as to where transgender students may change clothes have successfully implemented such policies without disruption and in a manner that protects the interests of all students. And as people become more informed about and accepting of gender nonconforming students, our district and our students are prepared to respectfully ensure equal access to our locker rooms without restriction. Thank you for the many messages we have received and for your thoughtful and respectful comments this evening in support of this district and all our students. In District 211, our students and our staff members respect and honor all individuals. We stand ready with understanding and support to adopt this policy.
All right, we're about to begin the citizen appearances portion. In order to use our time efficiently, I will call 2 names at a time. The first individual will go directly to the podium and prepare to address the board, while the second individual will come forward and wait in the designated chair alongside Dr. Hauser. We will continue this practice until we hear from 25 individuals. Our first speaker this evening will be Christine Orgine. And I would ask that Burka G. also come forward to prepare.
Point of order. Point of order. Are you going to ask for a resident, non-resident status?
I think I already made reference to that in my opening remarks.
Okay,
that people,
I missed it.
yeah, can do that. But thank you.
Apologies.
Please.
Good evening. My name is Christine Organ, and while I am not a resident of District 211, I am a resident of Arlington Heights and neighboring District 214, and I have many friends and colleagues in District 211. Moreover, since this is an issue addressing public education, I believe that the issue pertains to all citizens. I'd like to reiterate the points that I made in an email that I sent to the board last month. In short, I am emphatically in support of the new policy. I was in attendance at the board meeting last month, and I thank you for your time listening to public comment then and now. There was, however, a great deal of misinformation, including outright lies, disseminated by those opposed to the policy. And I fear that the continued dissemination of misinformation can cause further harm to transgender students in particular, and the public at large, if this misinformation continues to go unchecked. Misinformation, of course, never leads to good policy. What is more upsetting, though, is that the hurtful and sometimes hateful rhetoric used by those opposed to the policy can cause serious emotional distress to transgender students and their families who are directly or indirectly impacted by the issue at hand. I don't need to reiterate the evidence in support of the policy, nor do I need to point out all the errors in the comments that we heard last month. You are all aware of facts and the information from the superintendent's report. With the onslaught of misinformation and its detrimental impact on society, politics, and policy, it is more important than ever that we demonstrate fact-finding strategies and rely on the importance of using facts to guide us. I've been pleased that my children who are currently in District 25 and eventually District 214 are being taught in their elementary and middle school how to spot fake news and how to ascertain accurate information. This is critical to the education of our youth, and
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. We as adults need to not only teach this, but model it as well. To ignore the overwhelming amount of facts, evidence, and legal authority in support of the policy would be to disregard all that we are teaching our kids. Fear, like misinformation, never leads to good policy, and it is apparent that many of the arguments are based in fear and not fact. Finally, several opposed to the policy urged the school board to follow God's law. Of course, there are many different interpretations of God's law, but more importantly, I assume that the school board will take seriously its responsibility to ensure that there is a separation of church and state and will not be swayed by those opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Burka G, you're up, and Joyce Slavic, you're on deck, please.
Hello, my name is Julia Burka, and I'm a junior here at Fremd High School. I've been a competitive swimmer for 8 years, that is since 3rd grade. Like any other sport, as you grow up, you must dedicate more and more time to improve yourself as an athlete. I've been on the high school swim team for 3 years, and as a 3-year varsity athlete, I can tell you the pool has become my home away from home. I've built many friendships, accomplishments, and memories there, but above all, I felt safe. When it first came to my attention that the board was considering this policy, a lot of emotions came to mind. First, I was panicked, then I was angry, and then confused. I thought, they couldn't possibly be serious, could they? As I thought more on the topic, I began to see why one might consider the proposition. I understand that it is your job to protect the children of D211 and leaving no child behind. We as teenagers are at a pivotal time in our life. Most of us, we are at a pivotal point in our lives where we are learning and maturing and growing into young adults. However, most of us can hardly choose what to wear in the morning, much less make a decision regarding what gender we feel like, especially when we are constantly being influenced and pushed in every direction by the media. There are reasons that there are laws in place preventing minors from driving, drinking, and even having sex with an adult until they come of a certain age. I would ask that you do not experiment on me or on my fellow high schoolers. When I get out of practice from a long, tiring workout, I do not want to see a transgender student naked in the locker rooms. I do not want a transgender student to see me naked in the locker rooms. I do not want my privacy invaded.
You have 1 minute left.
I am just one girl in the midst of an entire district, but I have feelings too, and I am against this policy. Don't forget that the wants of a small minority do not outweigh the well-being of the majority. I know most of you have probably already forgotten my name, but my name is Julia Burka, and I ask that you would just think of me when you make this vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Slavic, you're up, and A. Liao, you're on deck.
Hi, my name is Joyce Slavic. I have an 8th grader at Plum Grove and a sophomore at Fremd. I support the inclusive policy of treating transgender students with acceptance and respect by allowing them full and equal use of the locker room for the gender with which they identify. I am troubled and saddened by adults who treat this as a sexual issue and are modeling intolerance towards kids who are different. Transgender people are at a higher risk for suicide primarily due to the fact that they face unique stressors. Any student can choose to go to a privacy stall to change. The difference with this policy is that no one is being forced to. The policy clearly doesn't allow people to randomly switch locker rooms despite the misinformation of intolerant people. There is a vetting process. Imagine if this was your child going through this. I would hope any parent would want their child to be treated in a way that validates them rather than embarrasses or humiliates them and may lead to self-harming thoughts. Let's teach our children acceptance over hate. As a separate but related issue, the Illinois Association of School Boards will again be voting on the controversial Resolution 1 and related Resolution 3 next month. This resolution calls for endorsing Illinois state legislation that would give Illinois school districts the option of allowing teachers and other school employees to carry guns at school. And it failed in last year's vote. I'm asking for the board to vote no for Resolutions 1 and 3 at this year's conference. There are many reasons why these resolutions should be rejected, but perhaps the reason that is best encapsulates them is that arming teachers and staff is not evidence-based approach to school safety. I've emailed each of you an excellent resource published by Everytown and major teacher associations. According to Everytown research, every year over 22,000 Americans, including 1,000 children and teens, commit suicide by firearm. Children and teens are impulsive. Suicide attempts using a firearm are almost always fatal. The vast majority of people who survive a suicide attempt do not ultimately die by suicide. Evidence also indicates that almost 80% of school shooters obtain their guns from the homes, of relatives or friends. There are many things that work to prevent violence rather than bringing in guns to schools that make every day inherently more dangerous and are reactions to violence in progress. The See Something, Say Something program created by Everytown, use of behavior threat assessments and adequate school psychologists and social workers. These are tools that could be used by any and all schools in our state. I would request that the district help make families aware that the Palatine Police Department and the Inverness Police Department both offer free gun locks to residents. If we can make our families aware of the importance of locking up guns, it would be a huge step in helping to protect our children, our schools, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. A. Liao, you're up, and Mandy Logan, you are on deck, please.
Okay, good evening. I'm Anna Liao, resident of the school District 211. I have two children attended Kona High School before. I'm here to ask you to vote no for the new locker room policy. Last month, I was in Newark Airport women's room. All of a sudden, a biological male walked in and lingered around. A woman was upset and quickly left the room. A security guard was called to get him out of there. At that moment, I feel my privacy was invaded. I felt very uncomfortable. This experience made me feel it's so important to protect District 211 students' privacy, dignity, and safety, especially the students are only 14 to 18 years old. The new locker room policy is ridiculous and will usher in many uncomfortable embarrassment and even hostile situation. The school is supposed to be a healthy learning environment for kids to learn math, science, literature, music, art, sports. However, with the district locker room policy, many students have become very uncomfortable and stressful, and some of them already transferred to the private school. Is it fair that the school board only try to accommodate 12 transgender students' needs, but sacrifice other 1,200 students' privacy? I do not think so. Tonight, many parents, including white, African American, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Indian, Spanish, Polish, and we all united here wearing red to show we are loving, kind, and compassionate people. We love all students, including transgender students. However, when protecting our students' privacy, we have to tell them to use the locker room based on their biological sex. In the last BOE meeting, there were 25 speakers, 17 were against, and only 8 in favor of the new policy. Dear commissioners, please listen to the public. The votes are in your hands tonight. Please vote no for the new policy so you will win our trust from the parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mandy Logan, you're up. Al Boslett, you're on deck, please.
Good evening. My name is Mandy Logan, and I'm a senior at Palatine High School, and I thank the board for hearing my thoughts. As a student in District 211, my classmates and I have learned to always treat others with tolerance, understanding, and respect. We have been taught to show this tolerance even and especially when someone is different from me. It is this lesson in respect that brings me here tonight, asking for the district's help to respect our classmates who are transgender. You've heard the descriptions about what happens in our locker rooms. Much of what you hear is not real. As a student, I can confirm that we do not completely undress in the locker rooms. Everyone in a high school locker room is uncomfortable. Everyone wants privacy. Every student is trying to keep on as much of their clothes as possible, and in fact, we sometimes even put our shorts over our leggings. No one is worried about what anyone else is doing, and anyone can use the changing rooms if they want more privacy. But no one should be forced to. And as a matter of fact, some students already choose to do this. Having someone who is transgender in the locker room or restroom does not make these spaces any more uncomfortable. I encourage you to recognize this and honor gender identity of all students in District 211. The district should be helping transgender students, not putting more obstacles in front of them because they face enough already. We know there might be students who are uncomfortable with transgender people in their locker room, and we want the district to be respectful of these students. But as a school district, your answer should be more teaching, not less. We should have discussions on what it means to be transgender, and we must honor everyone's viewpoint, but no one gets a veto. Students and the board need to realize that people who are transgender are more likely to be victims of violence and attack, not the other way around. So much of this controversy...
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. So much of this controversy around this issue has been about anger and disagreement, but more of this conversation should be about respect and fairness for our classmates. Because transgender or not, they are our classmates and friends. As a student, I started a petition in support of the inclusion of transgender students. I emailed it to the board president, and in only 2 weeks, we reached 4,819 signatures. I shared this petition with my social media, and my friends continued to share it. The student population has spoken, and I hope this school board ends up on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Boslett, you're up. Josh Arforth, you're on deck, please.
Hi, my name is Al Boslett, and I'm a resident of the district, and I have 2 children that have graduated from Fremd High School. I think the most important thing you have to think about tonight is whether or not you support Dr. Cates. He's put a ton of time, and his staff has put a ton of time into this. They've been studying this issue for 4 years. It's not like he's randomly coming in here throwing out an idea. This is a well-studied thought. So, Dr. Cates, I think you've done a great job in this, and I support you. 5,000 of the 20,000 students in the district have stepped forward and said, I support this locker room equality. I think the issue that you have to think about there is the fact that the students are the people that are going to have to live with it. Us adults might have strong opinions on it. We might have moral opinions on it that disagree or agree. But really, it's the students that are going to have to live with this policy every day. And I think they trust your ability to manage it. And I think they understand the situation probably better than we do. So I think as adults in this situation, we have to take a moment. We have to learn from the children. So to wrap, I'm concerned with this message that we as adults are sending to our children as far as how we work through these issues. As I've come to a couple of these meetings, I'm just disappointed in the behavior of us and how we talk about people as things or issues or topics. And I think we just have to think about them and understand that they're people. And Julia, I think your comment about making sure that the board protects you, and I think you're responsible to protect all 20,000 students in the district, and the board and the schools have done a very good job accommodating people with different needs, and I think this is no different. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Arforth, you're up. Ann Boslett, you're on deck, please.
Hello, my name is Josh Anforth. I'm a resident of District 211. I started hearing about children's safety and lawsuits. I attended my first board meeting in September. Later in that meeting, I stuck around till the end of it after everybody left, or almost close to the end of it, and the board reviewed the budget. I found out you had a $9 million surplus. Congratulations. That's excellent. I can't help to say to myself that boys and girls locker room and girls and boys locker rooms are putting children at risk, and lawsuits are going to follow. This decision will affect every child and taxpayer in District 211, present and future. My understanding is the board has the final decision. This is not standard operating procedure. This should be voted on by every District 211 taxpayer. I would encourage you, if possible, to get it on the presidential election in November. This decision does not need to be made tonight, not hastily. Thank you for letting me speak. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Ann Boslett, you're up. Nova Madej, you're on deck, please.
Hi, my name is Ann Boslett. My husband and I are long-term residents of Hoffman Estates. Our daughters attended Fremd High School. I'm currently a therapist at Palatine School District. And for the past 5 years, I have co-led an LGBTQ group at Holy Family Catholic Parish. There, I also volunteer with teens to ensure they all feel included and loved by God. I am not bussed in from afar. I do not work with ACLU or Illinois Safe Schools or Equality Illinois, although I admire the work they do. Trust me, I'm just a very boring, straight, cisgender woman that believes in equal rights for everyone, period. I'm here tonight to urge the board to vote for the Equal Education Opportunities Policy. For almost 5 years, the supporters of this policy have consistently brought you experts with facts and figures of why it is of utmost importance for trans students to have equal access to all educational opportunities. Parents for Privacy and others that oppose the policy began almost 5 years fighting to fully ban all trans students from locker rooms that match their gender identity. But it seems after 2 failed lawsuits and policies changing in schools around the United States that they are in full-blown panic. In the last months, on Parent for Privacy's own website, all within the first few posts, their language has drastically changed. Now we are hearing about trans athletes ruining professional sports, the catastrophic consequences of gender affirmation care, infertility when puberty blockers are used, insidious child sterilization programs, sex change regret, young people being led astray by their own parents, irresponsible LGBT activists,
You have 1 more minute.
child abuse, thank you, female erasure, and the death of all human rights. These are the words directly from their website. What happened to their request for privacy and respect for all citizens and all children? Their tune has changed. The devil is in the details. I urge the board to end this circus tonight and vote for the Equal Education Opportunities Policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Nova Madej, you're up. Julia Hong, you're on deck, please.
Superintendent Cates and members of the board, my name is Nova Madej. I am a 2018 graduate of Palatine High School and a 4-year attendee of this district. More to the point, I am one of the students who has sued the district over its policy denying students who are transgender full and equal access to the locker room. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you this evening. You will hear a lot of voices tonight on both sides. Some of them may be angry. Too many of these voices will never know the pain of being treated differently because of who you are, because of the person who you know yourself to be. At first, I was completely excluded from dressing for the gym in the girls' locker room and forced to change in the auxiliary locker room. This was isolating and drew attention to me that I didn't want. The walk from the separate locker room to the gym class was humiliating and made me feel like my school did not recognize me as the girl I am. The same was true when the district told me I could use the girls' locker room, but only if I agreed to change in a separate area that the other girls were not required to use. I just want to be treated like any other girl. But I did receive positive support and recognition when I was in school from my classmates and fellow students. Throughout my time in high school, the vast majority of my classmates treated me just like any other female student and allowed me to be myself. Those students have been waiting for you to change this policy. They have never seen this as a controversy and only want to be inclusive and supportive of other students. You have a chance tonight not just to change policy. You have the chance to set an example about respecting all students and treating them equally, no matter who they are. You should take that chance and act. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia Hong, you're up. Michelle Bear, you're on deck, please.
I'm going to do it once. She gave me her number, so my name is Dan Harrington. Nope, can't do it? Okay. You have to go with what the number is? She gave me her number. She gave me her place.
Julia is the person that's on.
Yeah, she's right there. She gave me the number.
Please, we don't need any help to hear from Julia Hong. So Julia, if you're here and would like to come to the podium, please do so.
She wanted to switch. I don't know if you...
Okay. She cannot switch, so
okay.
Please move along. Julia, do you wish to address the board or not? Michelle Bear, you're on deck.
Hi, good evening, my honored board members. My name is Julia Huang, and I'm a long-time resident in District 211. I have two boys. They attend right now they are not in school District 211, they are in District 15. So, but they are going to be Fremd High School student next year. So, the reason I gave my number to my friend because I think I did not prepare well. But I'm here to see, please say no to this policy because I think a person, when he or she is not even 18 years old, he cannot vote, he cannot drink alcohol, he cannot drive sometimes, but how can he choose his gender identity before even 18 years old? So I think if a person is not mature enough to choose his own gender, so we'd better give them some protection. Protection does not mean separation, does not mean not equalization. I think 4 years ago, the school district policy, they allowed the transgender student to change behind the curtain. I think that's very good. But right now, I don't know why you wanted to push everybody to be naked, to see each other in the locker room. That's not a hate. Love each other does not mean we need to see each other naked in the locker room and the restroom.
We have 1 more minute.
Thank you. Yeah, I just feel I have two boys and they just feel, oh, this is very embarrassing and this is very awkward because they don't want to see someone, you know, that's another gender. They appear in their locker room and restroom. They feel because, you know, people are divided to different genders. That does not mean they are not equal. They are just different. That's just different gender, but not means they are equal. We did not see boys or girls, they are different, but they are not equal. So that's my opinion, and I think please take serious consideration for our residents, for our boys and girls, to protect the girls and
time has
also
ended.
protect the girls.
Thank you. Michelle Bear, you're up. Caleb Mon, you're on deck, please.
Hello, my name is Michelle Bayer. I'm a Palatine resident, a taxpayer, and a parent of a Fremd High School student, and I'm also an educator. I speak to you in support of a policy that is inclusive for our LGBTQ+ students and allows our transgender students access to locker rooms and restrooms of their gender identity. I am a high school teacher of one of these local school districts that has such a policy. And we have not had, since implementation, we have not had any issues of transgender students abusing cisgender students. I don't know what we're afraid of. These kids are our kids, all of our children. Imagine you're a high school student who goes to the restroom at home in the morning hoping that you don't have to go again until you get back to the safety of your own house. Because these halls and these spaces are not welcome to you. Schools around the nation, including many, many school districts right here in Illinois and in the surrounding suburbs, long ago adopted policies that allow transgender students access to locker rooms and restrooms that match their gender identity. District 211 can do the same thing. The Illinois Human Rights Act requires everyone be treated equally based on gender identity. The same is true for students. Twice in the past few months, the Human Rights Commission, which interprets and applies the Human Rights Act, has found that transgender students must have full and equal access to locker rooms and restrooms. Students are not fully undressing in the locker rooms. Schools may choose to afford more privacy for any student who desires such privacy. But in doing so, schools must treat students equally. In other words, transgender students cannot be forced into private spaces while other students can elect to be in such spaces. Schools are places that should be safe for our children. We cannot make decisions out of fear. We need to be brave and do what is right for all of our kids by creating a positive and supportive learning environment for every child, no matter their race or their gender identity. This district has a lot to be proud of. My son has received a superior education, fantastic athletic opportunities, generous musical endeavors, all in a supportive environment over the 3 years he's been at Fremd. Let's provide these experiences to every child. There isn't just one way to be. We are all individuals who deserve to be treated kindly and with respect. Please adopt a policy that is in line with the federal guidelines that provides equity for our transgender students. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Caleb Mann, you're up. Chase Friel, you're on deck, please.
Good evening, Board. My name is Caleb Mann. I'm a senior at Stevenson High School in District 125. I wanted to bring to you guys a perspective from a discussion that I had with my health teacher during my junior year. He, unfortunately, has witnessed in Stevenson and in other schools that he has worked at instances in which males have faked being transgender to a woman in order to have access to the female bathrooms and female locker rooms, and unfortunately have had instances in which there's been sexual assault on other biological women in their own bathrooms, including one instance at Stevenson High School. It's for this reason that I believe that the locker room and bathroom system is a sex-based issue only and not a gender identity issue. Since teenagers in high school are hormonal humans, because we are still going through puberty, we, as previously stated, we don't have as many rights as adults of 18 years and 21 years old are, and that is because our brains are not fully developed and we are compelled to do unfortunate acts such as this. And I do have a lot of really good friends in this district, and to me, I would just hurt in my heart to hear if any of them were assaulted or even sexually harassed in this way. I don't believe that students of the biological gender that they are and who identify as that gender should be subjected to being forced to seeing an opposite gender like in their own locker room or bathroom and have the constant fear of they could possibly be faking this or they could possibly be able
You
to
have one
attack
more
me
minute.
at some point. That is not something that high schoolers should be able to feel in their educational environment. And it's for this reason that I really hope that you take deep consideration to possibly saying no to this policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chase Friel, you're up. Ramona Gupta, you're on deck, please.
Hello, so my name is Chase Friel. I'm a senior and I currently attend Palatine High School. I support this policy because I believe this policy will allow our district to continue moving towards inclusion, and it will be a positive step in accepting and affirming the identity of our transgender students in school. The step to allow equal access to locker room facilities is not solely allowing these students access to these facilities, it's allowing them to be comfortable in the place that matches their gender identity and allowing the district to extend a hand to these students and support them in their process. As a high school student, I've had many experiences in locker rooms during gym class and while changing for sports, and I know that they're uncomfortable for all students. I have never seen students fully change out of their clothing or walk around without clothes in the locker room. Most girls cover up while changing or face the lockers and they do so to stay out of the way and not to look at others. Others keep their leggings on under their shorts or other pants on instead of changing. People are not walking around the locker room without their clothes on, and that's a common misconception that isn't true. And as far as privacy stalls go, they've been open to all students who prefer a more private area to change, and I know students in my classes who have used them from time to time. They didn't use them because they were uncomfortable with transgender students changing near them. They used them because they were uncomfortable in the locker room, like most high school students are, and they preferred an area where they could have more privacy. These stalls can be accessible to anyone who feel like they would elect to choose this space, but they should not be no one should be forced to use these spaces either. And when I talked about this policy with a lot of peers in my school, I've discovered that many students either support the policy or don't feel affected or bothered by it. No one who I've talked to has felt violated by the idea of having a transgender student change in the locker room there, and none of the peers I've talked to express any discomfort in this policy. As far as the guidelines set in place, the guidelines set in place by this policy are strict in terms of the locker room usage, and there needs to be documentation of gender identity in order for the students to be allowed to change in the locker room that aligns with their identity. This policy is not opening locker rooms up for abuse or sexual misconduct, as some believe it is. It is opening up the locker rooms to our transgender students who deserve a space that they're comfortable in and a school that accepts and supports them. I mentioned before, but this policy is more than just thank you. This policy is more than just a facility access. It's a way for the district to extend a hand and truly support these students, because high school is a tough time, and when you're transitioning to your gender you feel comfortable with, you don't need to have any more obstacles in your way. Many other districts have adopted these policies to align with the Illinois Human Rights Act, and it's time we stepped on board too to protect all of our students. We're failing at protecting the human rights of our transgender students by not enacting this policy. As a student in high school, I believe that we need to start supporting our transgender students, classmates, and friends. This policy is a necessary step we must take. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramona Gupta, you're up. Robin Reilly, you're on deck, please.
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity to speak and for making the time to address this very important issue. My name is Ramona Gupta, and I'm an alumna of District 211, and I still live in the district 25 years later. I believe that all students deserve fair and equal access to educational facilities. I've worked in higher education for the last 10 years. In that time, I have worked with many trans, gender nonconforming, and non-binary students, faculty, and staff. I have shared all gender restroom facilities with them with absolutely no issues. In my experience, most college students really don't care. I've listened to countless stories about these students' experiences with their families and their schools. I can tell you that the ones who are supported are the ones who are readier to thrive in college. The ones who weren't, the ones whose families rejected them, whose schools and communities othered them, often feel isolated, struggle, and need counseling, academic interventions, and often financial support. They're sometimes hesitant to trust people, even the ones who are there to help them. This doesn't have to be. I want all students to thrive. I want all students to have the kind of support that they need. That doesn't need to start in college. People sometimes make the argument that high school students are too young to know their own gender identity or to learn about other people's gender identities. My own experiences working with young people, and much more importantly, scientific studies, tell me that that is not true. Young people do know themselves. They don't need to wait until college to explore their identities. There's no magic switch that suddenly renders them ready when they get to college. We need to support our kids when they tell us they need it. I would like my high school district to approach its work with students the way I do, with love, compassion, and celebration of all that our
You have one
students
more minute.
bring to our communities. Thank you. If you won't be swayed by a moral argument to do the right thing, then be convinced by the science. I imagine you've all already read many studies that show the detrimental effects of discriminatory policies. If you would like more, I'd be happy to provide some. They all show that trans students, all students, thrive when their communities support them. So I ask you, please give our students the equitable access to educational facilities that they need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Reilly, you're up. Wyman Chow, you're on deck, please.
Hello, my name is Robin Reilly, and I'm a District 211 resident. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Transgendered youth need the ability to use restrooms and locker rooms in alignment with their identity. Separate is not equal, it's discrimination, and discrimination doesn't belong in our schools. Studies from the American Academy of Pediatrics revealed the alarming portion of trans youth attempt suicide. Of the youth surveyed, over half trans male teens, 29% of female trans teens, and over 41% of non-binary youth attempted suicide at some point in their lives. If trans youth continue to be targeted and dehumanized, these numbers will not go down. If you take a moment to put yourself in someone else's shoes, it is easy to see why. Can you imagine waking up to go to school daily knowing you're going to be discriminated against just to go use the locker room to change for gym? How many times a day do you go to the bathroom when you're in the school building? Have you ever been kicked out of a bathroom for how you look? Can you imagine being the target of discrimination every time you had to pee? Do you think you'd want to stay in school? Do you think you'd feel safe? Do you think you'd value your life? Sadly, trans youth are answering no. Schools are supposed to be an environment that is a safe space for students to learn, and not just to learn facts, but to learn about who they are so they can grow up to become their greatest version. I know transgender is a topic that is difficult to understand unless you have firsthand experience, but I think we can all relate to a time, or many times, where someone made harsh judgments about us based on our appearances. Yet there's so much more to a person than what is seen at the surface level, and we all know this to be true.
You have one more minute.
If you choose discriminatory policies, more discrimination will follow. In a community built on discrimination and exclusion is no community at all. It is your responsibility as district leaders to ensure diversity in our youth is celebrated and embraced. For in our differences is the ability to learn and grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Wyman Zhao, you're up. Sarah Johnson, you're on deck, please.
Thank you. My name is Wyman Xiao. I'm a resident of this district. I'm not very well prepared. I'm first time here for the board meeting. I feel I need to let my voice heard as a citizen here. My point is I'm against this policy. I know there was a lot of debate on this, science and for psychology and many things, but the policy has to consider all the students, their rights. All the students are different, and they also have their rights. We should treat everybody equally, but equal not mean the same. I treat my son and my daughter differently because they are not the same, but they are equal. I love them the same. So I sincerely ask the board to consider the voice of everyone in this district, and especially actually the people actually feel really concerned about their kids. Some people say we are driven by fear. I think in a sense it's true, because we feel we don't give our kids a bright future. So that's what we want. Actually, I think both sides has to look at each other and treat with kind. I don't like the people to point fingers, but actually we also need to try to understand each other. The policy should not be pushed through anybody's throat. Actually, if you really want to reform the society, You have to start to understand each other. Don't try to push any policy or education or your ideology to the other side. Otherwise, we will generate more hate. The society won't be getting better. So we need to take this really sincerely. If there's many of the adults will feel very uncomfortable to have this policy in a public restroom, you should think about how the kids should do. If the actually transgender students actually having this kind of treatment in school, but they actually don't have the treatment in the general society,
You have 1 minute left.
it will not really help them. So, yeah, I think my point is clear, hopefully, but I just want to say again, I think we need to take this policy really seriously. And we maintain the current policy is probably the best compromise from the both sides. And that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Johnson, you're up. Jera Goldstein, you're on deck, please.
Good evening. I'm here to urge you not only to vote no on the proposed policy, but to reverse the existing policies that allow students any access to opposite-sex locker rooms or bathrooms at all. Getting undressed is a big deal. Authorities have discovered privacy is important even in life or death situations. Responders who dealt with anthrax incidents struggled with full-grown adults who did not want to undress to be decontaminated, even though their lives were at risk. A study on the NIHS's website found that, quote, provision for protecting public privacy should be considered as a vital element of the decontamination process, end quote. The Department of Homeland Security has issued a guide for such situations, which instructs that privacy should include, quote, segregation of males and females during decontamination, end quote. In other words, the government recognizes that even in life or death situations, the right to a sex-segregated space to undress must be respected. Yet you have been violating this right of your students, and not even because it's a life or death emergency. You've been violating this right in order to appease a tiny segment of the population who wishes they had been born as the opposite sex. A couple meetings ago, someone from the other side said they couldn't believe this was even a debate in 2019. I agree. I can't believe that in the era of Me Too and Time's Up, when women are coming forward with stories of sexual assault and harassment, when we're pushing more than ever for the right to set boundaries around our bodies, that we are having this conversation. This district's policies violate the very basics of consent that feminists are trying to educate people on. For years, the refrain, no means no, was standard. It means that when a person says no regarding access to their bodies, it means no, no ifs, ands, or buts. Multiple students here have explicitly communicated their no to undressing in front of opposite-sex students, and you have steamrolled over their boundaries anyway.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you. And no means no isn't even the modern standard anymore. The modernly accepted standard for consent is yes means yes, because it's recognized that in intimate situations, people can feel too pressured and intimidated to say no. Therefore, the mere absence of a no cannot ethically be interpreted as yes. The idea is that in order for consent to be valid, you must obtain an enthusiastic yes. It's especially clear in this case that it would be wrong to interpret silence as a yes, because we have heard reports of students being afraid to stand up to this policy for fear of backlash and bullying. These policies make me wonder how you teach consent in your sex ed classes. Do you teach your girls that if a boy asks her to send nude photos and she doesn't want to, she has to do it anyway because it will hurt his feelings otherwise? Do you teach your boys that if they're undressing a girl who's lying there silent and motionless, it's okay to keep going as long as she doesn't say no at any point? Unless you obtain an enthusiastic yes from every single one of the 12,000 students affected by this policy, you are violating consent.
Thank you. Jera Goldstein, you're up. Glenn Phil, you're on deck, please.
Hello, my name is Gera Goldstein, and I'm here to address you this evening. I am part of the District 113 Gender Expansive Support Team that's in Highland Park and Deerfield, and we have inclusive policies with 0 issues. When we talk about fear, I can sense hostility on both sides of this room. But I'm also a person who identifies as transgender. So when we talk about fear, standing in front of all of you and having to talk about my gender identity in order to bring value and experience to a group of people that have no experience about what it feels like to identify as transgender. It's not a choice. It's not a debate. I exist. I would like to request more time based on the interruption. Thank you. When someone wants to debate my existence or my experience based simply on their opinion or their belief, they're not truly having a debate. I would ask people in this room that fear or don't understand people who identify as transgender. I would ask them, how much time have you had in conversation with someone like myself who identifies as transgender? How many young students that we are all talking about in this room, how many of you have spent any time with these students, these young people who identify as transgender?
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. I know very few of you have. But I haven't. I've spent countless hours. And it's my life's work. So call me an expert? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But what I know is that of the hundreds of young people that I know who identify as transgender, not a single one of them has any interest in offending anyone else. I ask this board tonight to continue your march towards equity as you have done so beautifully over the course of these years. It's a learning experience, and I have watched this board and this community learn. I am extremely proud of all of you and grateful for D211 for this vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glenn Phil, you're up. Lisa Casalino, you're on deck, please.
My name is Glenn Phil. I do live in the district. I was raised in this school district. I never understood why, as a child, I was forced to change in front of an adult I barely knew, such as the gym teacher or even the swim coach, let alone other students. I believe that we should, if we're going to integrate this locker room situation and the bathrooms, we should honestly have private changing areas for all the students, not just for the ones that feel like they want to change, all of them, so that no one has to walk past anybody who's partially naked or feels uncomfortable within their own skin. Now, this is directed towards the board, but it also needs crowd participation. So by a show of hands, who lives here in the district? Okay, by a show of hands, who lives here in the district and opposes the equal educational opportunities as written? Who lives in the district and will vote to replace a board member who supports equal education opportunities as written? Okay. I hope the Daily Herald and other news outlets report the results of these questions. Now, for the last minute, for the shooting that happened in California, if we can all stand up and observe a moment of silence for those students, I think we can all agree on that. No?
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you.
Lisa Castellino, you're up. Ryan Logan, you're on deck, please.
Good evening. I am a parent of twin daughters who are freshmen here at Fremd, so we have 3.5 long years ahead of us in this district that we really like. In fact, a few years ago, I was not living in the district, and I wanted to have my kids be a part of this district, so I'm happy to have them here. The way that I'm raising my kids is I'm raising them to respect all people, no matter what they look like, what they are interested in, who they think they are, and I'm very proud of my 2 daughters. They have a whole wide array of friends of all different races, and we even had a party for Halloween a couple of weeks ago, and one of their friends is a transgender student who was at my house. So a lot of people talked about the privacy issue, but I'm going to kind of skip over that because the biggest concern that I have regarding the proposed policy is how it would affect girls' athletics. My twin daughters are not athletes, and because they're not athletes, I shouldn't really care, right? Allowing biological males who identify as girls to participate in girls' sports is not fair. Trans girls are biological males. Males have stronger bones and more muscle mass than females. They have larger rib cages that house the larger hearts and lungs that males have. So this comes back to my daughters who are not athletes. They do desire to participate in a no-cut sport, which is lacrosse, of which they have played for the past 3 years because they think it's fun. Imagine if trans girls were on a lacrosse team opposing my daughters who are not athletes. One of my girls happens to have asthma, and the other has a bad knee. It is obvious that their safety would be at high
You
risk.
have one more minute.
Thank you. I'm sure you are aware of the considerable amount of reporting about trans girls unfairly dominating girls' sports by winning, breaking records, and being awarded scholarships. Please think about how unfair it is to the girls who are not top athletes. If girls stop joining sports for fun, for fear of being injured by biological males, that would be tragic. Don't let girls' sports get ruined because of this type of foolish policy. Think about the girls who are not athletes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ryan Logan, you're up. Joseph Kwan, you're on deck, please.
I didn't prepare to speak, but I didn't know we couldn't switch the numbers, so winging it. I graduated from Palatine High School in 2013 as a 4-year varsity athlete, and I went on to play college for 4 years as an athlete. When I was a sophomore in college, I came out as transgender to my family, friends, and my women's softball team. My coach at the time was an ex-Navy SEAL, and his response was simple. I am the same person that I was, and I am still part of the team. My athletic department made every effort to make me feel comfortable, and I probably would not have gone on to play for all 4 years if it wasn't for the support of the university, the NCAA, and my teammates. The board should look to the NCAA as a role model. I can safely tell you that being trans is not a way for me to gain access to other bathrooms or to make people around me uncomfortable. Being trans is hard enough, and I think if you asked a lot of trans people if they could be born cisgendered in the body that they feel, they would probably answer yes. It's expensive and it's painful. I give myself a shot every week, and I've paid almost $5,000 to feel peace. I'm not thinking of assaulting others. I am in full support of the policy because trans people deserve to be treated equally. I urge the board to follow the lead of the NCAA and vote yes on this policy. And just to respond to the previous speaker, the NCAA policy for transgenders in athletics is that female transgenders need to transition for a full year before they can compete on teams. It's not necessarily like biological males are coming in and stealing the sports. With a little bit of time left, I would also like to have a show of hands of who is in favor of the policy that is a resident in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Kwan, you're up. Diana Gluey, you're on deck, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joseph Chan. I live in District 211 for many years, more than 12 years, 13 years. Just a few minutes ago, Ms. Logan who give a number of the a petition. It says they accumulated more than 4,700 signatures. But I have another number, people who signed for another petition against this the new policy has accumulated to more than 8,700, more than 8,700, 8,791. Okay, it's about close to 1,000 more than the people signed the petition support this new policy. At the hearing meeting in Palatine High School on September 19th, Dr. Cates introduced the reason why the board is gonna remove the restriction to the transgender student to access the locker room and the bathroom. He said, during the 4 years after the previous policy applied, there is no incident, no disruption happened. But it is not true. During the 4 years, I have attended more than 10 hearing meetings, Board of Education meetings during 4 years. I've heard multiple girl students complained that student A changed or taking shower naked in front of them. It is incident. It is disruption.
You have 1 more minute.
We believe everybody is created equally, but equal means in front of God, everybody has the same position, though they are different. They have the same human rights. It doesn't mean everybody is the same. Separation is because of difference. It doesn't mean it's not equal. No matter which sex a student has or what kind of gender identity he has, he or she has the same right to participate in all the education programs at school. Of course, he and she can use the bathroom and locker room, but the bathroom and locker room should be separated by biological sex because of the difference of anatomy. We are very sympathetic.
Your time has ended.
To those who have
Thank
tied
you.
up with the lie. Okay.
Diana Cluey, you're up. Susan Houseworth, you're on deck, please.
Thank you. My name's Diana. We've been hearing from both sides today, and while I do understand a lot of the fear that people have, we need to understand that transgender children are just people. They're not out to get you. They're not secretly plotting away. But one of the things that they do suffer from is so much misinformation out there. And being constantly told that they're the bad guys and the predators and whatnot gets under your skin. And if we do this to kids, if we tell them that just because you are transgender, you can't be trusted, that we won't believe them when they tell us, then we are adding to all of their problems. We're not helping. We're not understanding. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 15 to 24. According to the 2015 survey, 8.6% of high schoolers have attempted suicide. Among LGBTQA+ teens, they were 5 times more likely to attempt suicide than their cisgender and straight peers. And a lot of that is because of people telling them what they are when they know who they are. We don't need to trust our kids. We need to believe them when they tell us who they are. We don't need to
tell them that they're the bad guys.
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. And I know that one side of the room is trying to understand, but I think that more education is needed. And in front of a Board of Education, I think that's the most appropriate time to talk about it. But I hope that you will vote for this policy. I think it's the best thing for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Houseworth, you're up. Nellie Radons. Neela Radons, you're on deck, please.
So thank you for this opportunity to be heard. This is not something I'm comfortable with as far as the whole public speaking thing, but I do urge you to vote for this policy. I feel that not only do trans students belong in the locker room, they belong everywhere and anywhere. And all of my kids went through District 211 school, Schaumburg High School. They're all Schaumburg graduates, and they all agree with me. Thank you.
Neela Radons.
Hi, I'm Neela Radons. I'm a former graduate from SHS. I'd like to begin by reiterating a couple of statements made from the opposing side that I agree with, considering that my studies involve biology. Biologically, males have proven to be faster and stronger in most cases. This statement goes for both the animal and human world. In regards to strength, the contributing factor to more muscle mass in males is a hormone called testosterone, which causes muscular hypertrophy. This hormone is proven to be much more concentrated in males. This hormone is also an underlying factor to a human's social activity extreme, aggression. The reasoning behind a male's strength and speed stems from the animal kingdom. It's so they can pursue, in some cases, forced copulation or rape. Rape was another topic brought up a copious amount of times. The ultimate biological goal of rape is the continuation of evolution and the survival of a species. This was later identified as a primitive instinct. Through the idea of evolution, these characteristics and instincts have the ability to become passed down, which is why some males are able to physically rape a woman in the first place, without intention, besides satisfaction in most cases as well. Continuing on, I'd like to raise a couple of questions or food for thought, I guess you could say. Let's say the situation was reversed when it was first raised up. Let's say that a biological woman identified as a male and wanted to gain access to the men's locker room. Why hasn't this perspective been brought up yet? Is it because a person displaying feminine characteristics, or is a biologically female considered less of a threat or even not a threat at all? Perhaps this goes beyond transgenders. Perhaps this problem doesn't even involve transgenders at all. Perhaps this goes beyond biological reasoning. All of the opposing claims tend to be oriented around the actions of men. Perhaps this is a societal problem, thank you, involving the accountability of the male population's actions and intents. If testosterone and its correlating characteristics coming with it are the determinants as to why a transgender who now identifies as a female can't have access to a locker room due to potential outlashes, due to their biological makeup, then it is almost analogous to saying a woman can't hold office due to supposed hormonal imbalances, which results in lack of control of emotions and actions, which is absurd. This problem in regards to keeping men accountable goes beyond the capabilities of District 211. However, the right to access locker rooms reassures the acceptance of transgenders in the D211 community.
Thank you. That concludes the citizen appearances portion of the meeting. We're going to continue on with our consent agenda. If you intend to leave, if you could do that expeditiously so that we can move forward with our meeting. Thank you. Our consent agenda tonight is composed of two motions because not all board members were present on October 3rd. The first suggested motion is that the consent agenda with the removal of the minutes of the special meeting of October 3rd, 2019 be approved as presented. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. The second suggested motion is that the minutes of the special meeting of October 3rd, 2019 be approved and placed on file. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill? Aye. Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz? Aye. Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. That will bring us to special reports. First, we have our Freedom of Information Act requests. If there are no questions here, that will bring us to 2019 school report cards. We have a suggested motion that the Board of Education directs the superintendent to post the 2019 school report cards to the district and school websites no later than November 30, 2019. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. That will bring us to the Fall Curriculum Committee report for 2019-2020. We have a suggested motion that the Curriculum Committee report and recommendations be approved as presented. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion here? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. That will bring us to the placement testing of incoming freshmen. We simply have a report. Are there any questions or comments here? That will bring us to the Illinois High School Association Letter of Appreciation Recognition. Any questions or comments? That will bring us to the unfinished business portion of the meeting. First item.
Just 1 minute. Just for those that may not be aware, we hosted the state tennis tournament, and that was what that recognition was for. Thank you.
Thank you. First item of unfinished business, we have a proposed policy, equal educational opportunities. The suggested motion is that board policy file JAA, equal educational opportunities, be adopted and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion here?
I have a motion. I move the Board of Education postpone this matter pursuant to the Illinois School Code 105, Illinois ILCS 5/9-1.5 advisory referenda, where the board may authorize an advisory question of public policy to be placed on the ballot at the next regularly scheduled election in the school district.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so the question that the board will now face is the motion that the Board of Education postpone this matter, which is the proposed policy, equal educational opportunities. We would propose that matter pursuant to Illinois School Code 105, advisory referenda, where the board may authorize an advisory question of public policy to be placed on the ballot at the next regularly scheduled election in the school district. That is the question before the board. Any discussion here? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
I'm sorry, was there going to be discussion?
I offered discussion and no one said anything.
There was noise.
I appreciate that. Any discussion?
Do people understand when that would occur? The next election in the school district is in April.
It's not a matter to me of when it would occur. Civil rights aren't up for a vote.
This is not a civil rights issue. This is an issue where we as board members are accountable to the community. And we have all spoken about transparency and involving the community in the decisions that we must make. And I think that the community should be allowed the opportunity to weigh in formally during an election.
Excuse me, for 1 second before we could continue. We took the time to hear the public comment, and we appreciate all the enthusiasm, but now's the time for the board to deliberate and then cast their votes. So if you could, be patient. Thank you.
And
Ms.
that-
Klimkowitz.
oh, Thank you. And that is why we were elected. We're 7 different people here. We've got different backgrounds. We've got different experiences. And we were elected to represent the community. We have had 3 meetings already where we've gotten quite a bit of input, and some of the same people have given us the input, and we appreciate that. We listen to both sides. We've had emails. We've had a variety of things. I think we need to do what we were elected to do and do it in the best interest for our students, and we need to take action.
So this option was recently implemented as state law to allow boards to go to advisory referendums. In what situation would you consider utilizing that authority that's given to us? I can't think of a more significant decision, but I'd like to know if you would ever utilize an advisory referendum.
I don't know. I don't think this is appropriate for this one.
Can I ask if the advisory referendum can be put in place even though we may yet still tonight vote on the policy?
The way I understand this motion is that if this motion passes, we will not vote on this tonight. We will not vote on the issue at hand.
So, 2 questions to that. One is, are you open to revising your motion to allow the vote to take place tonight and to put it as a referendum?
No.
Advisory referendum?
No, that's not the way this works.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion to postpone? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Nay.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Nay.
Ms. Cavill?
Nay.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
No.
Mr. Lefevre?
No. That motion fails. Now, the question before the board now is board policy file JAA, equal educational opportunities, be adopted and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. That is the question before the board. Is there any discussion here?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment here. For the past few months, I have listened to every individual that has addressed the board and read every email that was sent to me concerning this public policy. I see both sides of this discussion, and however, I must look at this matter objectively as well as personally. The definition of discrimination is the unjust and prejudicial treatment of a different category of people, especially on the grounds of race, religion, age, as well as sexual orientation, and in this case, gender identity. I myself have been the subject of discrimination all my life. I understand what these people are fighting for. They're fighting for acceptance and understanding, and through this, as they go through this transitional period. Exclusion has a lasting effect on an individual. It hurts their confidence and brings on stress. They spend hours always looking back to see the whispers of hate, distrust, and its distasteful jokes that are made about them because they are different. Maybe people in this situation should put themselves in the parents, and these parents and the children that are transgender, and look at it from their perspective. What if this was one of your children? Think about the agony you would face every day as you watch them suffer from exclusion. Considering these facts, I support this policy.
Any other comments?
Yes. To correct the lies and misinformation leveled against this policy, I state the following. This policy does not limit educational or extracurricular opportunities for any student, including athletics. This policy does not remove existing privacy curtains or individual changing stations in any District 211 bathroom or locker room. It does not prevent administrators from making individual accommodations available to students who need them. It does not force people to undress in front of other people. It does not put any young person at any increased risk for violence, sexual or otherwise. It does not tell parents how to raise their kids. It does not prohibit students from respectfully expressing their religious values. It has nothing to do with our wellness or wellness curriculum or sex education classes. It does not void federal or state class-based anti-discrimination protections. It does not negate existing district policies prohibiting bullying, discrimination, or harassment. People perpetuating lies to the contrary want to whip up so much unfounded outrage and terror that discriminating against trans and gender nonconforming people seems an acceptable compromise. Discrimination is never an acceptable compromise. The truth is that trans people, trans health care, and trans bathroom access and trans rights pose no danger to anyone, which is why so many of our surrounding school districts have already passed similar policies with no issue. This policy expands educational and extracurricular opportunities for all students, not just trans and gender nonconforming students. It keeps existing privacy curtains and individual changing stations in bathrooms and locker rooms, and our strategic plan expands such accommodations in the future through capital improvements. It allows any student who wishes to request individual accommodations. It works in tandem with existing policies prohibiting bullying, discrimination, and harassment to keep our young people safe. It trusts young people to know what they need in order to thrive. It works with federal and state class-based anti-discrimination laws to protect our students and our staff. It frees administration to accommodate students' needs in the most appropriate ways. And most importantly, it makes our schools safer in 3 ways. First, trans people are at high risk when they are not allowed access to facilities that match their gender identity. As a district, we've made a commitment to all students, trans and cisgender, to maintain a safe, respectful, and welcoming environment that fosters learning. Creating and maintaining this environment is one of the most important protective factors in the overall reduction of school-based violence, and this policy supports that goal. Secondly, mandating some students use specific areas of an otherwise communal facility, but not others, is clearly discrimination, and discrimination puts our students at risk. Lastly, and most importantly, this policy extends privacy protections to any student who needs them. This benefits all of us. It benefits those like myself who survive sexual violence and wish to change in a more private area. It benefits trans people in various stages of transition who aren't yet comfortable in a communal facility and need more privacy. It benefits any young person who feels the need to use a changing cubicle, no questions asked. Students who wish for increased privacy can access those facilities. Students who don't can use the more communal facilities in accordance with their gender identity, where all evidence shows they are safest. This frees staff to focus on their very important duties rather than policing people's gender expression, since no one has to submit to an anatomical exam to work at or attend a District 211 school. Those calling for such exams in order to assign bathroom and locker room access advocate for the very opposite of privacy. Philip Pullman wrote, "Every little increase in human freedom has been fought over ferociously between those who want us to know more, be wiser and stronger, and those who want us to obey and be humble and submit." And this is the truth at the heart of our passionate disagreement, so it's no surprise that none of my comments tonight matter to some people here. No listing of verified facts, no restating of policy, no amount of legal risk, no likelihood of high financial penalty, no detailed explanation of the fundamental differences between state law and federal law, no summary of the October 8th case before the Supreme Court's staggering irrelevance to the question before this board, no strongly worded advice from our district attorneys, no set of detailed administrative procedures, no clear-headed statements from our superintendent, and no heart-to-heart conversations with trans people and their families will move some of you on this policy. Such opposition is like a stone that rivers of love find their way around when given enough time. And in the name of that love, I offer this policy my full support.
Anyone else? Input?
Thank you.
I believe the policy that we established 4 years ago was working. I understand that times have changed and there have been issues that have occurred, and we need to review this policy, this practice. I've heard from numerous individuals, pro and con, and I can see the intensity of the issue in the emails and in the conversation. I really don't know sometimes what the best solution is, but I know we do need to make a decision this evening and move forward. Assumptions and values have been shared over these past few months. I believe that some of these assumptions have validity and some do not, but each person has their beliefs. And as for values, each person puts a weight on their value. What one's belief or mission is may not be the same for another, but I feel strongly that one should not impose their values on another, but it appears that we may have done that. Family is a value that both sides support. That's what I have heard. However, the substance and the actions of that value is sometimes different. What I would ask for is respect for all students and families, understanding and treating the concerns of each equally and fairly. I would charge the administration with monitoring our students and making certain that no student is slighted, cisgender or transgender. I would ask that we value respect, cooperation, individuality, compassion, and the ability to talk about and understand our differences as we move forward with this policy. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to read something to the board and to the public from the Illinois Human Rights Act, Article 5, which addresses public accommodations. Section 5-103, exemption. Nothing in this article shall apply to, and this is at paragraph B, facilities distinctly private, as any facility as to discrimination based on sex, we've heard that word a few times here, which is distinctly private in nature, such as restrooms, shower rooms, bathhouses, health clubs, and other similar facilities for which the department, in its rules and regulations, may grant exemptions based on bona fide considerations of public policy. So it is possible to not implement this policy and to be in compliance with the law. There is an exemption.
Anyone else?
Just have a few thoughts that I'd like to share. The first is that I've done a lot of homework on this. I've read a lot of research, and I have some concerns with the way that we address individuals that are transgender. I believe that there are appropriate times to affirm individuals that identify as non-binary, fluid, and transgender. But there also has to be a mechanism to stop before affirmation and make sure that what they're feeling as far as anxiety and discomfort is really delved into. And I have children, I know how they can be when they're uncomfortable, how they feel like they're isolated and they don't have an opportunity to relate to their peer group. And that's a significant issue that we deal with across the board, whether an individual is cisgender or transgender or fluid, non-binary, I get it. But we also have to make sure that we don't jump to affirmation without ensuring that there are proper opportunities to address underlying issues that may be misinterpreted. We hear about people who jump on Google and they try to self-diagnose a medical condition. And heck, I try to do it when I'm trying to figure out if I need a mechanic or I can do something to my car at home. And most of the time I'm wrong. So I just caution that adopting a policy that basically jumps to affirmation, I think it may do more harm than good. And that's just my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Nay.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Nay.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. That motion carries. The next item of business is a proposed policy revision, public participation at board meetings. We have a suggested motion that board policy file BDDH/KD, public participation at board meetings, be revised and as proposed and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have a suggested motion that board policy file BDDB agenda format be revised as proposed and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. If you could, if you're not staying for the rest of the meeting, if you could expeditiously leave and do so quietly, please, so that we can continue. Thank you.
Can we wait a few minutes till the room clears?
I can't hear.
Yeah, I can't hear.
I can't hear.
I think we're just going to continue. Next item of business is the 2019 proposed tax levy and truth in taxation resolution. We have a suggested motion that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution, which sets forth the amount of $235,932 million as the proposed 2019 levy for Township High School District 211, and directs publication of a notice of public hearing on the proposed levy at its meeting to be held on December 12th, 2019. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion here.
I think it's too high, but I've been saying that for the last 4 years, so I don't think I need to keep repeating myself.
Let me add some detail to that. District 211 is going to sell property in the near future for $17 million. We had an $8 million surplus last year, and the administration has recommended a $5 million additional payment to IMRF, which in my opinion is unnecessary. That's $30 million that could be used to offset an $8,763,000 increase in the taxes. I don't think that this is necessary. It should be reduced.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
No.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Vehemently no.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. That motion carries. Next, we have the Illinois Association of School Boards resolutions for 2019 for discussion. Mr.
Yes.
Rosenblum.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. As defined by the Illinois Association of School Boards, IASB, the Delegate Assembly held annually at the Joint Annual Conference is the meeting where school board members vote on the proposals submitted by local school boards. This year's Delegate Assembly is taking place on Saturday, November 23rd. Each school board that is a member of the association is entitled to one voting delegate at the Delegate Assembly. This will be my third year serving as our board's delegate. As the District 211 assigned delegate, it is my responsibility to review proposed resolutions with the full board before determining how I will vote on behalf of our school board. During the assembly next weekend, delegates will vote to adopt or not adopt the resolutions as set forth by the Resolutions Committee. The Delegate Assembly vote determines the final decision on all resolutions. If approved by the Delegate Assembly, resolutions become position statements or belief statements in the IASB Constitution and thus give IASB staff direction on legislative positions. This year, there are 13 resolutions being voted upon at the Assembly. 2 of the resolutions, numbers 1 and 3, have created some buzz in our community. People have emailed some or all of us on the board or met with us expressing their views in support or opposition of the resolutions. To best support the board, I would like to take a couple of different approaches regarding the 13 resolutions being considered. For resolutions number 1 and 3, although the Resolutions Committee is recommending a vote in favor of them, I would like to read each resolution, ask for any discussion or comments, and then ask each individual board member whether I should vote for or against it. As it is my responsibility as a delegate, regardless of the recommendations of the Resolutions Committee or my personal feelings or views one way or another, I plan to vote in support of the majority of this Board of Education. For the remaining resolutions, I will ask Dr. Cates if there is anything we should otherwise consider within our district, and if any other board members have comments or would like to discuss any of them. If there are no objections by this Board of Education to the recommendations to adopt or not adopt by the Resolutions Committee, I will vote in support of the committee's recommendation. I will begin with resolution number 1. I will read the resolution itself without the submitting district or Resolutions Committee rationale for or against its adoption. Resolution number 1, student safety, submitted by Mercer County School District 404. Be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and advocate for legislation which provides local school boards the option of developing student safety and protection plans which allow voluntary district employees in any capacity the ability to carry a concealed firearm on district property, provided the employee has a valid Illinois FOID card, holds a certified Illinois concealed carry license, has completed all additional trainings and certifications set forth by the respective school board, one of which must include yearly certified active shooter training. Only district employees who fulfill all requirements listed and receive superintendent and board approval would be eligible as an active and armed part of the Student Safety and Protection Plan. The Resolutions Committee recommends a do adopt of this resolution. Are there any board members, or would Dr. Cates care to comment or discuss this specific resolution?
I may be making an assumption, but I believe I'm the only one at this table who ever bore arms and was directed, a FOID card, and was directed to use lethal authority under certain circumstances. It is a profound responsibility, and I think the only people qualified to pull the trigger in a student situation is a police officer. I understand that a lot of this that is driving it is because many school districts don't have the facilities that we have. They don't have a highly trained police force that they have access to. So they're looking for a way to do something, and I can understand that. But I still think that it's a local issue. These school districts can get the counties involved and the municipalities, come up with some money to hire 1 or 2 police officers and let them do it. That's where I'm at. So I would recommend a no.
I agree. Perfectly stated. I agree.
I would just like to give you a little background. I am one of the 21 resolution chairs that met in August. And Last year, there was considerable discussion in regards to this, and the school district brought it back this year. They made some changes, they included training, they included a variety of things. This was one of 18 resolutions that was presented to us. One of their main concerns is they do not have the response time that we have here. It could take 20 minutes for the sheriff to show up. One of the things they pointed out, the town has one officer and is backed up by the sheriff's department that has approximately 20 minutes for a response time. And there are probably other areas that school districts that run into this. We are extremely fortunate here. If we need anything, we've got a response of just a couple of minutes, for having police officers here. One of the things that's important is the local control. And that is what this group has tried to bring forward, that it's local control. It's something they've talked about. It's something they have worked on with their administration, with their staff, and they feel comfortable to be able to do that. I would suspect that here in this area, and I know of families that do, duck hunting and deer hunting and all of these other things, and we've got people here in this area that have guns that keep them locked up, keep them safe. These are people that probably do the same thing, and there's probably a number of concealed carry people in this particular area. They've talked with their teachers, they've talked with their administration, and they need to keep their kids safe. That's one of the ways that they're looking at. They've done things. They've upgraded their facilities. They have key cards. They have cameras. But if something were to happen, they want to know that they can have a faster response to protect the students and the staff instead of waiting 20 minutes. That is all they're asking for, is the local control to be able to do that. That was what was presented at the resolutions committee, and the vote of the group that was there was 13 yes and 7 no. So kind of close to being split also. Just for background.
Thank you.
I have problems. I agree with Mr. Kramer in the sense that really you need a police officer there that's trained to do this. Even the best police officers have 30% chance of hitting their targets. If you're putting a staff member in charge, what are their odds then? What is the percentage of hitting the targets, let alone hitting a student? I'm not for this, and I agree with Mr. Kramer on that.
Dr. Cage, did you want to share any perspective?
Sure, I certainly value the board's input. In terms of our perspective, we would not pursue this plan, and I do not recommend its adoption. And speaking with other local superintendents, we all have concerns about, despite some degree of training, it is not a commensurate degree of training that we have with our officers in our school. I would not support it, or this practice in this district.
I don't support this.
My position from last year hasn't changed. I think that when you have a teacher in authority, that power dynamic is intimidating enough to add who protects the students from the armed teacher if there's an issue with the armed teacher and your law enforcement's 20 minutes away.
So I've had the opportunity to discuss this resolution with many people across the district. Nobody I've spoken to is in favor of this resolution. The submitting school district included in their submittal that several states, including Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, have developed programs to train and approve concealed carry school staff and allow districts to decide what is best for their communities. In addition to speaking with people in our community, I have also spoken with educators and school administrators in Ohio, Indiana, and Missouri regarding this. All have said they oppose it, and in fact, are not using such programs in their schools or communities. While understanding the request came from a rural district and realizing their reasonings for it, I believe there are way too many potential problems from this There are other options rather than allowing the arming of teachers and other school and district staff members, and feel this is not in the best interests of those in the schools or community. I personally would not feel more safe on district property knowing that there may be a district employee carrying a concealed weapon. For all these reasons, I personally am not in favor of adopting this resolution. So I think I have feedback from Anna. Are you in support of this resolution or not in support of the vote for this resolution, to adopt or not adopt? What is your...
My feeling is I would support this, but the consensus here is not support. So
Okay.
that's the direction you're being given, I would suspect,
All
from
right.
what you're saying.
So based on this, I will support our Board of Education and vote no on resolution number 1 at the Delegate Assembly. Thank you. The other resolution I would like to specifically bring up for comments and discussion is resolution number 3, School Safety Grant Program, submitted by Wheeling Community Consolidated School District 21. The resolution reads as follows. Be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall advocate for the creation and funding of a school safety grant program at the state level that would assist school districts in the hiring of school resource officers, SROs, or school security personnel for the protection of students and staff. SROs in this instance shall mean the definition in section 10-20.67 of the school code. School security personnel may include off-duty law enforcement officers of a law enforcement officer who has retired within the previous 5 years. School security personnel may carry a firearm in a school if they continue receiving the same ongoing firearm training as active police officers. Priority in the distribution of grants shall be based on both geography, school districts with lengthy response times from first responders, and a financial need, Tier 1 and Tier 2 districts, based on the evidence-based funding model in that order, would receive priority in the awarding of the grants. The resolution committee recommends a do adopt of this resolution. Are there any school board members, or would Dr. Cates care to comment or discuss this specific resolution?
I agree with it in principle up to the point where you go into the ors, okay? I think the state of Illinois should provide grant money to school districts to employ a police officer, okay? So anything after active police officer, can the resolution be amended at the meeting to strike the retired or other people who could be trained, and just limit the grant to school districts to hire a
Anna,
police?
do you know if the resolution can be amended at the Delegate Assembly?
I think it may be, but I'm not certain at this time.
Yeah, I would support it with an amendment so that the grant money only went to school districts that needed, and it would be spent on hiring a resource officer, a qualified, certified, bona fide police officer.
Okay, so I'm going to follow with my comments, if that's okay, because I think it may even clarify some of that. I've had the opportunity to discuss this resolution with many people across the district as well, and nobody I've spoken to is in favor of this resolution either. This resolution comes across to many people like another one supporting guns in the schools. Rather, it's an opportunity for the state to fund schools so they can employ SROs like we have in District 211. SROs have responsibilities that go beyond simply acting like a defense against weapons internally or externally. They are a tremendous asset to our district and schools with many responsibilities, such as helping students going through tough times, students or staff that may be showing signs of potential problems to themselves or others, supporting and often facilitating our anti-drugs and violence programs, and other things supporting the well-being of our students, staff, and visitors. According to section 10-20-67 of the school code, they are assigned to a school or district under an agreement with a local law enforcement agency. Many school districts are not as fortunate as we are to have such a strong relationship with our community law enforcement or funds available to pay for these officers. It is for those schools that this resolution is being put forth for consideration. It does not encourage guns in schools. In my opinion, it supports schools to have trained officers on the property to protect people if needed. A concern I have with this resolution is that the resolution committee points out that in more rural areas, SROs are not readily available and can be costly. If there are not enough off-duty or retired law enforcement officers, I don't understand how grant money from the state will get them into the community of need. So I don't really see that as solving that specific problem. There are also already a couple of legislative bills going through the General Assembly in Springfield in support of this resolution. Some of them support safety grants for physical needs and programs, but not personnel. This resolution is about state grant money for SROs. In reading the specific section, Section 10-20-67 of the school code says a school resource officer, A, means a law enforcement officer who has been primarily assigned to a school or school district under an agreement with a local law enforcement agency. B, beginning January 1st, 2021, any law enforcement agency that provides a school resource officer under this section shall provide to the school district a certificate of completion or approved waiver issued by the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board under Section 10.22 of the Illinois Police Training Act, indicating that the subject officer has completed the requisite course of instruction in the applicable subject areas within 1 year of assignment, or has prior experience in training which satisfies this requirement. In an effort to defray costs, any law enforcement agency that provides a school resource officer should apply for grant funding through the Federal Community-Oriented Policing Services Grant Program. So from that information and the school code, it specifically identifies that it is a law enforcement officer. So with that in mind, I am in support of this resolution allowing school districts to seek such financial assistance and the state for providing it to fund SROs.
But the resolution talks about other than SROs.
This one does not.
No.
Oh, it does not?
No.
It's changed?
If I may,
Okay.
so having them on the same list, I would agree is somewhat confusing. The writers of it did say, we know that that other one likely will not pass, and so they said, we want to craft one that would be considered. So it does read, may include off-duty law enforcement officers or a law enforcement officer who has retired within the previous 5 years.
Right, I'm not even in favor of that. If they're not a police officer, they're not a police officer. They can unretire.
I think one of the things that's important is this came about, this is from Wheeling School District 21. So I was a little confused with your comment, Mr. Rosenblum, that nobody supported it in this area. But it came from the school board there and also 214. There were members that came and spoke in regards to this and supported it. And again, this came out of all of the discussion from the prior year as hopefully being an answer to helping the school districts that are having difficulties getting an officer, where they could probably pay for the officer during the school year, but what happens with them during the summer? But maybe with this particular grant, it would help and possibly be able to help provide them with a school resource officer that they know is going to be there throughout the year.
Who is providing the grant?
Comes from the state.
So the state's doing legislation on this then?
The state is currently working on legislation. Right now, their legislation supports giving the schools money for safety that is in regards to physical things like how the building is and safety for facilities and not for personnel. So this would advocate for them to do so also in regards to personnel people.
I would support this resolution if it weren't for the provision with retired officers. I also think that an officer in this position needs to be an active duty police officer, not one who's retired, even with the commitment to ongoing training. If it weren't for that one inclusion, I would be in support of this policy, but I do not support retired police officers being able to fill this role.
I concur with Mrs. Campbell.
I want to just sort of envision our schools without police officers. We would struggle. That would not be a preferable thing. I think we all can agree to that. I would like to compare it then. The next step would be our officers without a weapon. And I would not support that. Our officers need to have a weapon, and that is important for us. So when I put myself in a position of a superintendent in a district where they don't have access to both of those items combined, that is a very tenuous position. So the resolution is actually, as people have pointed out, to fund a grant. It is hierarchical in its selection process in identifying those districts with lengthy response times and Tier 1 and Tier 2 districts based on this complicated evidence-based funding, but they are the schools most in need. So the resolution is not the proposed legislation. I would agree entirely with the comments that have been made that by the time it reached a legislative proposal, that bill strike the part about a retired officer. In its standing that it would support a funding of a grant, I would support this resolution for the prospect of facing the scenario in which I didn't have a trained police officer and I didn't have a trained police officer with a weapon. Those are items that are important for the protection. And I can understand the writers of it, and I think they took careful measure to point out priority. In short, I would support the resolution.
I went to, oh, go ahead, Mr. Jones.
I was going to say my opposition to the resolution is that it's very loose. Everything in here says may.
Yeah.
There's nothing here that says they shall comply outside of the definition. So, you know, they may include off-duty law enforcement. They may, you know, it's just very loose. You're asking for school security personnel or an SRO. There's a different definition between the two. Yeah, I can see this going wrong in a lot of different ways.
That was just what I was going to say. So I agree with Mr. Dombrowski's comments. And then, you know, I'm from downstate, so I went to high school in a very rural high school district. I'm extremely sympathetic to the principles behind this. I do agree the language is a little bit vague for me. I'm not really sure what's going to happen if it's adopted because it's vague, but my main issue is with the retired police officers. They need to be active duty law enforcement.
I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is they're vague for a reason, to give the lobbyists that we have an opportunity to work with legislators. Because if it's, you know, concrete something.
But then we don't know what we're going to get. Because then it becomes fluid after we approve the movement to start lobbying.
But I think the intent and the gist of it is what they work with. Because as you know, you give things to the legislature and sometimes it comes out differently than what you had intended. But if we have this kind of grasp of the intent that we want. And I think that they understand that because they were part of the resolutions committee when all of this was discussed. They have the concept of how to go forward with it.
You know, for me, fundamentally, we're paying over $30,000 to be a member of this organization to lobby for, you know, certain things, and I'm not necessarily sure that this comes to me as a value benefit for our district to support this resolution.
There's, what, 800 and how many school districts in the state? So
811, I think.
So there's a lot of us. Everybody has input at the delegates assembly to have a say in this. So I think that that's kind of where everything comes out.
I agree with everything that everybody raised. This is just, although it's loose, yeah, this doesn't even count toward what the legislation would be or a vote toward that. It's just kind of an encouragement. It would seem counterintuitive to me not to provide support of this, which would be at least consistent with the idea that, yeah, we have school resource officers here, and that's it. They are officers. We value that too. We don't have less than that. And we choose to spend the dollars to have them here. But I can support this.
I'm not sure I can support this simply because unless some of the language was changed, such as Mr. Kramer, I agree with him, it needs to be a police officer. But also Mr. Brodsky brings up a point that this is a little loose, and knowing the state legislature, they could change this whole thing to a point that it wouldn't be good.
But without some input from the school boards, God only knows what they could do. So at least we have, this allows our lobbyists to have some input and to be talking on the behalf of the school districts in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, and again, I'm just going to read this line. School security personnel may carry a firearm in a school if they continue receiving the same ongoing firearm training as active police officers. So you're basically arming an equivalent to a police officer with the only requirement being the firearm training. And that line alone is a deal breaker for me personally, and I would imagine most people.
Sounds like you have the guidance then.
Okay, so I will take and make, so one of the things I will do is I will take and make comments at the delegate assembly with regards to our concerns. One of the things about the delegate assembly is they give school districts and the delegates an opportunity to express their views for or against the particular resolution. So I will make sure that I stand up and get in line with the others to express our concerns. And if I can, ask them to revise in support of what we have to say. So based on this, I will support our Board of Education and vote no on resolution number 3 at the delegate assembly. So for the remaining so thank you very much for that. For the remaining resolutions, I asked Dr. Cates if there's...
Question. Okay, so if there is an amendment to take that out about the school security personnel, you're still going to vote no?
So if the concerns that our fellow board members have expressed are no longer in place, then it sounds like that's why they're saying no. Unless anybody objects to that if they do in fact revise the resolution to include, to exclude security personnel.
You just want it to be full-fledged police officers. We probably all agree that that's better.
And be the existing police officers.
Yeah. And you'd vote yes then, if it was amended?
Unless anybody objects. Anybody object to that?
No, that was the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. For the remaining resolutions, I asked Dr. Cates if there's anything we should otherwise consider within our school district, or if any other board members have comments or would like to discuss any of them.
I reviewed each of the resolutions. I concur with the recommendation from the School Board Association. If there's any questions that anyone had about any of them, I would certainly be willing to answer or provide my thoughts on it.
Well, I would like to comment on one of, well, I don't know if you were going to get onto this, Mr. Rosenblum. Position Statement 1.01, the educational programs. That was a resolution that District 211 had submitted. And basically what that one is an addition to the educational programs. And we added a sentence to it where it says, school personnel are encouraged to implement trauma-responsive practices to support student success within a trauma-responsive school framework, because we felt that that was important to bring that forward, because that is a topic of concern with a lot of the school districts, and we have to figure out new ways of dealing with our students and figuring out why or what is happening to our students. So they agreed to put this in the educational programs. So that's coming from our school district here.
So I'm really excited about that because it's our school district that has a resolution in front of the entire delegate assembly. So very excited to represent us and to have that in place.
If I can make one comment on that, it has really been important for our schools and has just helped to continue the work that we've been conducting. It is a terrific momentum that is happening within the district right now. Mr. Kovacs is actually leading, teams that are continuing the work we talked about and initiated. The team sitting in the room here today throughout the course of the early institute. Our institute day in January will again focus on this, and this is an important addition, and I was pleased it's actually better than a resolution where they put it, and so kudos to the committee, and I think it's very helpful to include it.
Thank you.
So I greatly appreciate the conversation, perspectives, and response from all of my colleagues here at the table. If there are no objections by this Board of Education to the recommendations to adopt or not adopt the remaining resolutions and position statements as set forth by the Resolutions Committee, I will vote in support of the committee's recommendations.
I would just add one more caution. As a professional that deals with minority or owned firms, item 2 with regard to the business enterprise, it sometimes can be very difficult meeting those goals in other areas of the state. We're aware that it's very difficult to get minority participation in areas like Peoria. Usually downstate around St. Louis and the Chicago area, it's not as difficult. I would just emphasize that the goals, if there is a push to make this inclusive, that they're not restrictive or punitive if they're difficult to meet those goals. Sometimes it can take quite a bit of effort to show that there's been an attempt to meet those goals in order to get the exemption. There just isn't the talent pool, if you will, to meet some goals that may be set. So they're admirable, but there's still a lot of growing pains in finding veteran firms at this time as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That'll bring us to new business. We have potential topics for future discussion. Does anyone have anything here? Moving right along to committee reports. First, we have NSSEO. Mrs. Klumkowitz.
Okay. In regards to the NSSEO, there's a lot of growth that's happening with Kirk minor program redesign. And as you know, when you start something new, there's all sorts of things that crop up. They've had some growing pains, teacher shortages and aide shortages, so that has caused some problems. We've had a couple of parents that expressed some concerns. Dr. Hackett is working with her staff to see how can we hire more people, where can we reach out to, and I think a lot of the school districts are facing those problems. So that was brought forward to us. She did give us an update, the November update, regarding the minor school and regarding Kirk campus. So again, there's a lot of growth that's going on there. There was a large grant that came from the state for minor school for the playground, which is going to be just phenomenal. Interactive opportunities for our children with disabilities. There's a freeze right now of accepting out of member district students because, you know, they need a few more staff members. So we'll see what happens in that regard. And again, Dr. Hackett and her staff are working on those issues that the parents had brought forward. And that was the main thing. So,
Thank you. That'll bring us to EdRed. Mrs. Klimkowitz again.
All right, EdRed. The meeting was November 1st. We got a little bit of information on a couple of bills that are forward. They did talk about the Property Tax Relief Task Force update, and they said that there was no mention of a freeze, but there do seem to be recommendations appear to be on TIF, so I'm not certain what's going to come from that. There was a gentleman from TRS, and what was his name? Rick Frankenfield, and he gave a presentation on TRS and how it's affecting staff and possibly some effects that it'll have on state. So it was more of an information session. I don't know if Lauren has something more.
Thank you. Next, we have Partners for Our Community, Evening Community Services. Do we have Mr. Kovac?
I can offer some insight. We met last month, and it's encouraging to see the partner agencies recognize the opportunity that the expansion of the adult ESL classes is bringing forward. Many of the participants in the adult class bring children who we provide childcare for, but it's also an audience for the other agencies to provide some work with, and the Schaumburg Township Library is now sponsoring a weekly reading program for those youngsters, and it is a great example of the way that the agencies can now expand their offerings.
Thank you. That'll bring us to Parent Connection Committee. Ms. Cavill?
It was a really good meeting. I was happy to be there since it was my first time. Topics that we spent a lot of time on were the message coding of red, yellow, green messages, which the parents and caring adults in attendance unanimously very much appreciated. So they reported that being very successful. One area of feedback had to do with our district website. And some of the systems tutorials parents found very difficult to find because various tutorials to use some of our various software applications and some of the systems that we have are in different places on the website, and they were wanting it to be under one tab, which made it easier to find. Another area of feedback was a request for more easily available online resources for students who are applying to college. Some college counselors at some schools have a reputation for kind of DIYing a page where they put all the resources together that parents really appreciated, and parents who had contact with career or college counselors who weren't doing a similar initiative wanted the same sort of thing. So they wanted some resources for college applications to be more easily available on our website somehow. And then we also discussed the equal opportunities policy, and it was a favorable reception. So those were the four main topics that we spent time on at that meeting.
I would just comment that is a very helpful group, and we actively seek their suggestions, and we were able to make some changes then immediately following those recommendations, and they were accurate insights, and so we were able to make those improvements, and it has been a very helpful committee. I know Mr. Dombrowski has participated previously, so thank you for supporting that.
Thank you.
It's not a committee report, but may I make one about the D211 District Foundation. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend the Realtors Against Homelessness fundraiser. I want to point out to this board that Dr. Cates was singled out as having been instrumental and nurturing that group. I think they've raised, what, 75, 100,000? I don't know what the numbers are in support of District 211 programs, and I just wanted to thank you for the work that you've done there.
Well, thank you. A lot of people involved in it, and it is all direct relief to our students and families, so it is great to have any involvement.
And it was a fun event, too.
It was that.
Very good, thank you. Following on Mr. Kramer's thought, I'd just like to take a moment to thank Dr. Cates and everyone that he has corralled to help facilitate the meetings that we have held at the schools to try and deal with the policy change that have taken place over certainly the last several months, if not the last several years, and just extend the board's appreciation for the great care and planning and facilitation of the larger quantities of people and dealing with somewhat of a difficult topic for a long period of time. I think in general everything went very well, and all the work that has gone into this by everyone that took a part in that and played a role in that, thank you very much. All right.
Could I make another statement?
Sure.
About the facilities. There was a 2 or 3 inch snowfall that we had the day before Fremd High School played their playoff game. I want to thank Mr. Pullman for getting his crew out there, clearing out the field and clearing out the stands. They did an excellent job. And by game time, it was like there was never any snow except where they piled it on the sidelines. They did a great job, and I want to thank them for that.
Good, thank you. All right, we don't have to go to closed session. We've done that, so we will just deal with the motions. First, we have...
Before we do that, should I go back to item number 10, the announcements? I see on the calendar that Hoffman Estates is having their National Honor Society induction. Is there, it doesn't indicate, I was just curious, is there a board member scheduled to attend? And if so, who that might be?
Is Kathy here? I'm not directly familiar with that. Okay, do we have any volunteers?
That's the...
I would be happy to represent the school board at that particular induction ceremony if there isn't anyone else.
I thought there was somebody that was going to attend, because I had talked with Sally and said I would, but she said somebody else was going to be there.
It's scheduled for the 19th.
Perhaps we can just take care of this outside the meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
Sure. That will bring us to retirement requests. We have a suggested motion that the Board of Education accepts the retirement requests of Diane Evanson, effective May 2020, consistent with the master contract of the District 211 United Support Staff. Rafael Martinez, effective July 2022, according to the master contract of the District 211 Operations and Maintenance Group. Deborah Morse, effective June 2022, consistent with the master contract of the District 211 United Support Staff. Lorraine Russo, effective May 2020, according to the master contract of District 211 Teachers Union. Margaret Ciata, effective April 2020, according to the master contract of the District 211 United Support Staff. Jackie Weingart, effective May 2020, according to the master contract of the District 211 Teachers Union, and further retracts the retirement agreement with Cynthia Urshan, previously approved for May 2021. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. Next, we have a suggested motion that the Board of Education authorize settlement in the pending workers' compensation matter as presented. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. Next, we have a suggested motion that the board adopt a resolution and notice to remedy for Becky Schomer, and that such notice be sent to said employee by the Secretary of the Board of Education by certified mail. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Ms. Cavill?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre?
Aye. And finally, we have a suggested motion that effective July 1, 2020, Joshua Shoemaker be appointed as the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction at a gross salary of $185,000. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Ms. Cavill.
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Lefebvre.
Aye. If there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.